when you have a client that you have to recommend number of hours, how do you do this based on the initial student assessment and creating an individualized ABA program for this client? I mean, that's a tough one. You know, some of it depends on, some of it depends on funding and what the funding providers provide. I know that some insurance companies will say, we cover this much or we cover this much, et cetera. And that is what it is. If you have to recommend a certain number of hours, go to the research. So, you look at a kiddo who's younger, a kiddo who's 2, 3 years old, early intervention, they're saying upwards of 30 hours, 40 hours a week. Now, you also have to look at and say, well, what's doable for parents? So what's clinically appropriate? First of all, the research says, going way back to Lovaas, Tristram Smith, blah, 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 research says 30 to 40 hours a week. Okay. What are kiddos already involved in and what's doable for parents? Okay, well, they're already involved in school. They're already involved in this. Parents are working and this and this and this and this. So you can say, listen, I recommend, or the research says that for a learner, like a very beginner learner who doesn't have any gross motor imitation, who is in his own little world, who is, not following instructions, et cetera, right off the bat, at least 20 to 40, I would say 20 to 30 hours a week. I typically start with, 20 or 30 because I don't want to overwhelm parents. We don't have a lot of funding up in Canada right now in Ontario. So, and the funding we do have, there's wait lists and everything else. So we typically say, listen, like 20 to 30 hours is best practice. However, I know that you don't have the funding. So most parents start with, less hours and they work their way up to that. That's the gold standard. And that's how I would start. If you've got a kiddo who is a little bit higher, so, someone who's an intermediate learner asking some questions, doing this, doing that, typically what I ask parents is, well, what else are they doing during the day? So, if they're going to some kind of group or if they're going to school, awesome. Can a therapist go with them? Because that would be huge to be able to create social interaction. If the answer to that is no, okay, but they still do need school, so let's leave them in school or let's leave that half time. But that they're intermediate and they could still do with a lot of therapy. You start recommending 10 to 20 hours a week, period, is what I would recommend. Kiddos who are, super high and they're, talks in lots of sentences, they're learning from their environment already. They need more social support than anything else. So that's how I would recommend the number of hours. Share any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I wonder if they were asking about like how to prove it through the intake assessment, like how, if like you were to go to an insurance company and say, well, based on this assessment, this is why they need so many hours. I don't know if there's a way to do that. We don't have to do that here. We just know from like a sense of how long we think it takes the kid to get through the programs. So if it's like an intermediate learner, generally they need a little bit more time because those programs are just more involved. Beginner learner like wouldn't need as much time because it's more play-based and it's more, they're usually, they could tolerate a little bit less, but I don't know if there's a way to like support that with the assessment. I don't know if there's any way to do that, but I don't know if anyone has any other ideas.
Feel free to type that in.